Hey folks, your OS Reviews. You're watching our video first look of the LeapFrog LeapPad2. This is an educational product from LeapFrog, and they've been making quite a few iterations of this lately. We saw the first gen model a few years back. Now there's this one. There's also a slightly larger version which features Wi-Fi, and there's also the LeapPad3, which is now available that just includes Wi-Fi out of the box. But otherwise, this does have a slightly faster processor and a bit more of memory and RAM compared to the first gen model, in addition to integrated cameras both on the front and also on the rear now. So this is an educational product designed for kids, I would say, under 11 years, and includes quite a few games and activities that allows them to learn basic language skills as well as, let's say, mathematical skills, and it uses almost a tablet or an ebook reader function and form factor to allow them to, again, learn and process that information. Otherwise, it has a pretty decent price point as well. You can now find LeapPad2 on Amazon for under $50, so it isn't too expensive, and it does use a proprietary charging port, and we'll talk about the design later on. So first, this is the Explorer Kit, which also includes a soft touch rubber skin that you can see is attached now. It's pretty firm and allows it to protect the actual LeapPad. The front features access to a roughly 5-inch panel that uses a TFT LCD display underneath. It is a resistive touchscreen as opposed to a capacitive screen, and capacitive screens are found on our modern smartphones as well as tablets, so it's not as sensitive. However, in this case, I think that LeapFrog made the right decision because resistive screens, despite being made out of plastic and requiring you to use, let's say, a stylus or a sharper object, is a bit more cheaper to manufacture, so it allows them to keep the price of the LeapPad2 down. It's also more resilient, so if you do drop it, it absorbs the shock a bit more easily, as opposed to a capacitive screen since it's made out of glass, unlike, again, this plastic shell, which is quite soft. So beneath here, we have access to a 4-way navigation toggle with a center OK key. It's pretty tactile and responsive. There's also a loudspeaker on the side here, which can get extremely loud. There are voice-guided prompts on here, of course, since it is a kid product, and you can opt to turn those on or off by adjusting the volume. There's also a home key down below here, also access to volume controls on the very top as opposed to on the sides. Pretty large bezels, but again, kind of to make the product easier to hold, and again, it goes hand in hand with the cost as well as preventing damage. There's also the aforementioned front-facing camera. It's a basic 1-megapixel / VGA quality, so not anything to write home about, but since this model in particular doesn't have internet connectivity, it's really just meant for entertainment purposes as well as a few VR games, since it is incapable of doing Skype calls or video conferencing. There's also a power on-off key, which has a backlight which will illuminate during the charging process and when it is powered on. The left-hand spine features access to a power on-off switch as well as a microphone. The top features access to the cartridge slot, which allows you to pop in some proprietary games from LeapFrog to expand the utility as well as the programs that you can run on here. There's also a mini USB port to sync info with a computer, such as the images that you take on here. There's about 2 gigs of built-in memory on here as well, and in addition to a 3.5mm headphone jack. The back features that rear camera, also pretty low in terms of megapixel, and there's a lanyard strap on either side as well as the aforementioned plastic stylus. Beneath here, there are 2 ports that actually includes built-in rechargeable lithium-ion batteries, which can be swapped out. That's kind of nice to see. Although, in the case the batteries do die, I would recommend just getting a new LeapPad, since the cost of that might be lower than replacing the batteries itself, since the unit itself is so affordable. So turning things on, we're going to take a quick look at the user interface. The boot up time is quite swift and quick, even though the processor here is definitely under 1 gigahertz and single core for sure. Here we have that boot up sequence, and we're greeted to a fairly intuitive and easy to navigate UI. Simplified, definitely, and you have the ability to sign in as multiple people. So we're just going to use a guest mode for now.
Game progress and badges will not be saved while playing as a guest.
Pretty clear voice-guided prompts going on here. And you can see here you have a wallpaper on the background that you can change, as well as kind of this music in the background that you can tap on to change the volume. Again, the speaker here can get quite loud. The interface is very easy to go through, and despite being a resistive screen, it is fairly responsive. And again, it almost reminds me of a little bit like iOS in terms of the icons. The icons are oversized just to make things easier to use, and there is kind of a interactive live wallpaper in the background going on as well. So cartridge, of course, obviously works for specific games. You have a few basic books that you can read on here, not as easy as an ebook reader since it is in full color as opposed to monochrome black and white, but it does work pretty well, helps kids learn learn fairly quickly. There is a basic music player on here that you can drag and drop a few songs when linked up to a Mac or a PC. No drivers are needed, and it works nicely as a music player, even though it's quite large. My Stuff allows you to store videos as well as your photos, and there's also things such as an art studio. It allows you to draw a little bit and doodle. So if we take a quick look at that, for instance, again, the app takes a few seconds to load, and afterwards we do need to switch the orientation of the screen. In this instance, there's also some prompts that tells you how to set things up. So let's go and create into the art studio directly. And again, we have this pretty clean canvas area for you to draw and doodle from, and it also allows us to pick a color and also the thickness of the pen pretty easily. Again, it's not pressure sensitive, so a pretty basic as far as drawing experience is concerned, but it does work. And you can also calibrate the touchscreen sensitivity as well as the accuracy in the settings drawer. So going back home, I can exit out of that specific application. Otherwise, taking a closer look, there's also learning tools on here, such as a calculator, some new tools that you get from firmware updates, which are pushed through the computer and you drag and drop, since again, this version doesn't have Wi-Fi. There's also things like calendar, a clock, which allows you to check out time and date info, some basic learning-based games that help you with memorization, help you with, in terms of helping your kids learn faster, perhaps with math, and those things, again, can be expanded upon with other apps that you might want to download here as well. And this is, again, some other games that are formatted just for spelling and writing. Something I don't really love is how they really label these things by category as opposed to by title, just to make it easier for kids to know, this is a game as opposed to a specific name. However, it does make this really based on just the icon, since it's hard to know what what the game is just by looking at it without actually playing it first, since they're all labeled game, as you can see here, as opposed to just a specific name. But it does work, and sometimes there's a little bit of sluggishness in the background, but really not too crippling, and for kids it certainly does the job. So checking out the camera really quickly here, again, a very basic camera experience. In the guest mode, we can't really save too much info either. It does reset once we power the unit off and on again, but it is a feature nonetheless. Let's skip this and go directly into our camera. There's also the ability to record some very basic videos, not too high resolution at all, but it does work, and you have this viewfinder in front, as you can see there, that you can use to, let's say, capture an image, to save it, as well as reverse the camera and also edit it. So pretty user-friendly menu as far as that is concerned. So all in all, I would say that the LeapPad2 kind of replaces older educational tools that LeapFrog came out with almost 10 years ago now, since we first saw this company release some of their learning pads as well as learning readers. And this one in particular kind of takes it into this digital format with this more of a tablet form factor, allows people to read ebooks and also interact with the digital screen more akin to a tablet or a smartphone. And overall, for this price point, which is a very low cost, I think they did a pretty good job. I would still recommend opting for a slightly higher price to get the LeapPad 3 for parents, just because I think that Wi-Fi functionality is quite useful, in the sense it can allow you to automatically download firmware updates, and also unlocks things like more apps that you can directly download over the air. There's also a parental safety mode of a basic web browser that you can use with Wi-Fi, so it unlocks a lot more options that I think are worth considering for just a little bit more money. But if you want a very basic budget-oriented model that you also want to be safe, you don't want extra internet activities and also internet options, then definitely check out the LeapPad2. It's a fairly modern looking as far as design from this current generation of LeapPads that the company has come out with. Thanks for watching this review here at OS Reviews. This has been LeapFrog LeapPad2 Explorer Edition Learning Tablet.